my editing skills are crap. Let me move this. But can the same thing be said about Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn? I think that's the name of this one. Stick around and find out. Oh, I kind of feel like watching that right now. Anyway, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. The synopsis on IMDb reads, a twisted tale told by Harley Quinn herself when Gotham's most nefariously narcissistic villain, Roman Sionis, and his zealous right hand, Zaz, put a target on a young girl named Cass. The city is turned upside down looking for her. Harley, Huntress, Black Canary, and Renee Montoya's paths collide. Eventually, and the unlikely foursome have no choice but to team up, eventually, to take Roman down. Oh. What a waste. What a waste of these characters. What a waste of these names of these characters. My suspicion is, unless you're just going to be thrilled as a fan of these particular characters to see them on screen in any form, unless that's the case, I think there's a lot to disappoint you about this experience. Let's talk about what this animal is. Harley, as the IMDb description indicates, is the narrator of the movie. She sets the tone. She's a fourth wall breaking character, so similar in some ways to the function that Deadpool played in the Deadpool movies. But she also really sets the tone. It's all from her perspective. This is not, in my opinion, a Birds of Prey movie. Birds of Prey should have been in the subtitle. Harley Quinn should be the name of this movie, with some subtitle referencing Birds of Prey. This is, maybe they set out to make a Birds of Prey movie that just heavily featured Harley Quinn. That is not what I saw. What I saw was a Harley Quinn movie with too many side characters. It did not feel like an ensemble cast. It felt like a Harley Quinn movie, and they kept involving these other side characters without developing them. It was just cluttering up the Harley Quinn movie, you know? That's not to say that I was really itching for a Harley Quinn movie, but if that's what I went to the theater for, I would feel like these other characters are just getting in the way. Why we keep dealing with these other characters? Huntress as a character, I don't think even needs to be in this movie, even though of the side characters, she was the one I found most interesting. But in terms of the structure of the plot, she would, I think, be the easiest one to just snip right out of this movie. It's non-linear in the story presentation, again, because of Harley Quinn as the, bonkers, narrator. And the non-linear nature of it stole momentum from the experience, from me a number of times. There was also rushed lip service intros to characters, like Huntress comes in, and then Harley cuts in as a narrator and says, oh yeah, I should probably give you a little introduction. And then she spits out an introduction. We see clips of like flashbacks of Huntress's early life, and then back into the action. Now we've introduced the character. It's just such a thrown together introduction. And it's cut in a way that, like, it reminds me of like just kind of an action comedy, or like a heist comedy in some ways, where they'll do some cutaways. It reminds me a little bit of Ant-Man. You know how in the Ant-Man movies they would have, I can't remember the Latino supporting character. He's a really well-known, recognizable face, especially, among Latino actors. And they would do these scenes where they would like cut away, and you would hear him doing the narration and stuff. And you would even see in the flashbacks play, the actors like, acting out the scene that happened, but it would be his, I want to say Luis is maybe his name, first or last, I don't know. It would be his voice, that they would be mouthing to. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. If you know what I'm talking about, you do. If you don't, you're lost. I'm sorry. Anyway, just these really quick flashback sequences, and it was lots of like that kind of pop humor with editing that this movie was kind of carried by, stylistically. It's in general has a cartoony vibe, but ironically seems afraid to be comic booky. A cartoony vibe, but afraid to be comic booky. Okay, I'll tell you what I mean by that. We've got these characters from DC Comics that if you know them, you're going to have ideas in mind of what you would see of these characters when they are brought to the screen. Cassandra Cain. Oh my gosh. I know this character. I'm least familiar with this character, I think, of all the characters that are in this movie, my knowledge of her in the comics. But I know that she was like super awesome assassin, whatever, and I think she was Batgirl for a while, and like you did not mess with Cassandra Cain in DC Comics, In this movie, Cassandra Cain is nothing more than a street thief. And honestly, she is the one that is having to be rescued through most of the movie. She is, in a movie with so much focus on female empowerment, she is the damsel in distress. Yes, she does have some capability as a thief, blah, 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 but the main function she serves is the one that everyone's after and the quote-unquote good guys are trying to protect, and is the most helpless of all the characters, I'm baffled by that choice. Dinah Lance, also known as Black Canary in the comic books. They reference the fact that her mother had a power that was, and it was funny when they even brought up like her power, like a character says to her, your mother, you have the same power as your mother, and power, just the word power felt so out of place in this movie because of all the comic booky elements they'd stripped away, even though technically it does share continuity with the DC movies, with specifically the Suicide Squad movie. Those continuity references are just very brief. They're kind of inside joke kind of references. The plot does not depend on them at all, but they stripped away so much of the comic book elements that suddenly out of it, a reference to someone having a power and using that word power felt kind of out of left field. It was really weird, And so as you can guess, since they mention the fact that she has a power, the power does show up at some point, but it's about as minimal. Its use is about as minimal as it could possibly be, And even Dinah Lance as a martial artist. I feel like everybody in this movie, when they need to be, can be a martial artist, except for Cassandra Cain. They can all rock 'em, sock 'em, beat up people and stuff like that. And so she didn't feel like a standout to me, even compared to Harley Quinn, who, as part of her backstory, does not have any martial arts training. In fact, I would say that Harley Quinn was a much more capable fighter, or at least spectacular fighter, than Dinah Lance was, who in the comics has this real serious martial arts training. So she had some moments, I guess, some cool moments, but whatever. Huntress is supposed to be almost a Batman type character. In one version of DC Comics, she is Batman's daughter, but in the main DC universe, she's not. But she's still like this awesome combatant, awesome assassin, and she has a little bit of gadgety stuff going on, not to the degree Batman does. But in this movie, she had a crossbow, and that's it, as far as gadgets go, that I could remember, and not really a costume to speak of. None of them had costumes to speak of. Even Harley Quinn's look was muted a bit compared to what we saw of her, I think, in Suicide Squad. It's like they were afraid to put anybody in anything that could be called a costume, They didn't even, like with Dinah Lance, sometimes when they're trying to ground superheroes, when they bring them to the screen, what they'll do is they'll color coordinate their civilian clothing or whatever they're wearing to kind of go along with the colors they're famous for in the comics. And unless Black Canary's costume colors have changed from the classic black and blue with maybe a little bit of yellow in recent years, since I haven't been connected to the character in a while. She didn't seem to be wearing colors that evoked at all what I know of Black Canary. She also didn't have blonde hair. The character's kind of famous for having blonde hair, I'm fine that they went with a black actress, and changed it up that way. But, in the comics, the Dinah Lance, the second Black Canary, is naturally a brunette, and she wears a wig, and plenty of black women wear, interesting stylish wigs and stuff like that. And so I'm a little surprised that they didn't, refer to that. Maybe because Harley was a blonde. I don't know. It just seemed like to be totally I don't get what they were doing. I don't get what they were doing. Renee Montoya. Okay, now she's a detective in the comics, but I'm almost certain that she eventually becomes the Question. And there's nothing. I mean, they certainly don't go that route. That's understandable. That's understandable. I mean, she was a well-known detective in the comics long before she ever became the Question. So it's not that I expected her to become the Question in this movie, but I did kind of hope, if not expect, the other characters to suit up at least in the last 20 minutes. Speaking of the last 20 minutes, that's the first time you see all these characters kind of team up together and be in the same scene, be in the same room. So for a movie called Birds of Prey, to have them, I mean, first off, in an origin movie, I expect and totally allow for the first half of the movie to be about them out of their costumes. That's par for the course to have an origin movie where you don't see them in costume until about an hour in. But we never saw them in costume, and we didn't even see the titular team be a team in any function until the last 20 minutes of the movie. I don't think that's much of an exaggeration. Wow, I'm baffled. I'm baffled. So what's left? If you go into this and you're willing to say, okay, I don't need any elements that are really unique to a comic book. I can just watch an action comedy with quirky, interesting characters and an ensemble cast. We've seen things like those before. We've seen heist movies like that. We've seen other kind of action comedies like that before. I think it's a shame to strip away those elements and just have it be another action comedy that, I guess for a standout quality has a female-led cast. I think that's kind of a movement going on in Hollywood right now to kind of do those kinds of things, have strong female leads. So I guess it stands out a little bit for that. But other than that, it just feels like a quirky action comedy that loosely seems to take place in the DC universe. The dialogue didn't interest me or make me chuckle. Now, that second comment, that doesn't say much because a lot of people think the Marvel movies are funny and stuff like that. I tend to not chuckle or certainly not laugh, at those movies. So you may chuckle, you may laugh at a lot here. I went in the morning, so there's hardly anybody in the theater, so I didn't get a read on what the audience thought or what audiences might think about this movie. Let's see. The characters are unstoppably capable if it will look cool or be funny. That's just what I noticed. It was like there were some situations that characters seemed ineffective in. It's like, oh, we're supposed to feel like they're up against the ropes. But if the writers it seemed like if the writers had an idea, oh, let's have her do this cool kick where she expertly flips around, kicks the cell phone, and then it knocks the other person in the head and knocks them out. I'm like, wow, I didn't know she had that kind of crazy acrobatic martial arts ability. We don't see that displayed any other time. If she could do that kind of stuff, she should be doing that all the time. But no, she just does it when it'll be surprising and be a punchline, So that really, even though it's a comedy, I like to have set limitations that I can sense for the characters and what they're capable of so that at least there's room for some kind of tension. Otherwise, I just feel like they're all going to be fine because as soon as the writer wants something funny to happen, then they will become unstoppably capable as part of a punchline, So, that was disappointing. Side characters are underdeveloped, and by side characters, I mean what should be the ensemble cast, Let's see here. It gives the impression to the point, they're underdeveloped to the point that I'm like, I wonder how much of this is post-production decision. Like, I should have checked to see if, like, Margot Robbie had an executive producer role or some kind of producer role on this, or if somebody just really wanted to make a Margot Robbie vehicle, because that's what this movie felt like to me. This is a movie for Margot Robbie and Margot Robbie's interpretation of the Harley Quinn character. And it seemed like there was a scene where Black Mask seemed emotionally hurt by something that another character did to them. And I'm thinking to myself, did that other character really mean that much to you that they could hurt you in this way? That didn't seem developed or established at all. But he gave this performance that really he seemed hurt. It was an interesting moment for the character. I was like, oh, there's something going on there with this character. But I was like, where did we establish that? I don't understand why he's feeling this way. And it made me think, I'll bet there was one or more scenes establishing his connection to this character that hit the cutting room floor because they wanted it to be an hour and 50 minutes, and to feature more of Margot Robbie. That's speculation on my part. I don't know. That's just the impression that I was left with. There's also, a moment in the movie where Black Mask puts on the black mask, and the way it was shot made it seem like I'm supposed to feel like, oh, this really means something. He's putting on the mask. And I guess it could mean something to comic book fans who are like, when are we going to see him put on the black mask? When are we going to see that moment? Oh, here it is. Now he's the Black Mask, But dramatically, it made me feel like, is this supposed to mean something? He's got this collection of masks, which makes me feel like there's something in his backstory, something about masks that maybe I should be aware of. I'm not familiar with this character. I know of him, but I don't know his backstory and stuff. And this movie did nothing to help me understand his motivations, what makes him tick, what he... it did a little bit. Actually, Harley Quinn rattled off some stuff about his backstory as part of a punchline making fun of him that kind of maybe, I guess, gave me a sense of his motivation. But wow. So many wasted characters, I think. Let's see here. This movie can be, as far as its continuity, can be completely dismissed. Another Birds of Prey movie could easily feel like it was the first Birds of Prey movie because they barely become a team, they barely come together, and so you could very easily have a second movie, which hopefully would be very different from this one, that would feel like the beginning, of the Birds of Prey franchise. I think your enjoyment of this is really going to depend on liking Harley Quinn as a character, liking that character and wanting to see that character, or really liking Margot Robbie, or really liking Margot Robbie's performance as Harley Quinn, or both, Again, felt like it was a Margot Robbie vehicle that throws all the other characters under the bus. I feel like the R rating was mostly for F-bombs, I would guess. I felt like it was leaning on F-bombs as like a punchline to kind of give just a little bit of punchiness to some of the lines. And I really wanted more clever, and I have no problem with hearing F-bombs, but I wanted more clever and interesting writing and more interesting dialogue, that was surprised me and delighted me, and I just didn't feel that at all. I think apart from the F-bombs, if they would have toned down the violence just a little bit, it could almost function as a PG-13 movie. So, weird choices. I'm baffled by the choices here. Let me talk about the cast just briefly. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Her performance is based on the animated character, from the DC animated movies, at least the New York accent, the character in general is written, and created. That was the formation of the character, was that animated series. Her New York accent is very inconsistent compared to how thick it always seemed to be in the animated series. Hers was just like, it would be really thick every once in a while, almost like for emphasis, I felt like was the intent. But I don't know if I don't necessarily think that was a skill issue on the part of Margot Robbie. Maybe it's part of her psychosis in her mind as she's creating her performance of this character. I don't know. I don't know, but it was weird and noticeable to me that the accent was inconsistent. She's really this Looney Tunes cartoon character, like the classic Looney Tunes type characters, and that's what the animated character was like. Once briefly, she did become grounded in a scene where she was sad, and I felt some humanity. And I know, you're going to say, well, Peter, you just like things that are dark and heavy and serious. That's true. But I think I would have found her funny moments funnier if there would have been some contrast, some more grounded moments for the character, and then I would be surprised by her suddenly pivoting to be weird again or crazy again or whatever. Instead, it's just like it's at 10 all the time. And so I just become numb to it, It just becomes, there was no kind of like spikes for me in the wackiness, the Looney Tunes-ness, the cartoonishness of her character. And I think that would have helped. All the other female ensemble performances, excuse me, were of no interest to me. They felt very bland. And they were getting no help from the script or from the editing. Sorry, I'm drying out talking about this one so much. Huntress is a possible exception for that. I think that the actress, who I've liked in a lot of other movies I've seen her in, I think she did well with what very, very little she was given. Ewan McGregor was somewhat interesting to me as Black Mask. All the performances really felt kind of just elevated, slightly cartoony, slightly elevated. But he is even more so. He had these unpredictable mood swings, though, that made him interesting in a couple of scenes. Slightly over the top, but he still made some choices that made me curious about the backstory of for his character, which I wish they would have given more time to. Stunts and visuals, the visual design, the sets and the costumes is subtly colorful. It's one more thing that contributes to what I feel like is the cartoony vibe. Both the performances and the visual design of the movie have just a little bit of an elevated, slightly larger than life. I'm not talking about the Batman Forever or Batman and Robin, that kind of stuff. But just slightly elevated, slightly more colorful, slightly cartoony. And the fight scenes were all fine. I didn't find them to be really striking or memorable as action movies go, or certainly not as superhero movies go, or comic book. I know they're not superheroes, but comic book character movies. I wonder if it might have worked better for me if the violence had been more brutal and shocking. Again, to have some contrast with just the Looney Tunes nature of things. There is one moment where Harley is shown to do something like horrible to a person, like brutally. She kills them in a brutal way. There's gore involved and stuff, but it was just like one moment, and then the rest of the time she's like shooting people with a shot with beanbags and out of a shotgun and stuff, and it's a lot of non-lethal kind of stuff, and I just wonder if maybe they're kind of like in the movie Kick-Ass, or what's another example? Well, Deadpool I suppose would be another example, where you've got this kind of like cartoonish, zany kind of vibe that is like shockingly juxtaposed with really brutal violence and brutal action. I'm not one that like always, is like hungering for brutal action and stuff, but I do wonder if like having some element like that juxtaposed with the zaniness might have made the humor more funny, I don't know. But anyway, I just found the stunts and visuals and all that action type stuff really kind of unremarkable for me. Themes. Let's talk about themes. Female oppression, I think, is the major theme of this movie. Men are the dominant abusers of women that are around them. They're ordering them around. They're victimizing them, or they're taking credit for their accomplishments. I'm fine with exploring that theme. I think that could be a good thing to explore. I don't want to see women being underestimated, devalued, or mistreated. But I wish that message was propped up by a story and characters that I understood and cared about. All right, that's about all my thoughts. I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, you guessed it, skip. Just completely skip this one. There's nothing of consequence for the larger DC universe that happens in this movie. A second Birds of Prey movie could virtually ignore the events of this movie and serve as an actual introduction to these characters. It's not funny for you, Pater. It's stripped of almost all elements unique to the comic book genre for seemingly no reason that I can fathom. It will be an unfocused, uninteresting, and honestly baffling experience for you because of the choices of the filmmakers in a vision for this movie that completely eludes me. So just forget this one existed, Pater, and hope that next Suicide Squad movie in development will be good. In fact, go watch the original Suicide Squad if you really want, more, I guess, of Harley Quinn or something. You like that movie, okay, but you liked it a lot more than this one. You can get my spoiler-filled reactions to Birds of Prey today in my Spoiler Car video series. Just one of many perks available for the various tiers that you can be a part of over at patreon.com/spiritblade productions. This one has an MPAA rating of R for strong violence and language throughout, some sexual and drug material. Right now I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Brian Franklin, Gabriel Stenson, Colin Wright, Libre, Olin D. Branham, Steph Stefan Kremik, and Winston Crutchfield. Thank you for supporting me and SBP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name and song? Check out our page on Patreon. All right. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected, and stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. Again, patreon.com/SpiritBlade Productions for more info. Then join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.